extreme communists in Russia, the old guard, especially people in the military or justice ministries, are very unhappy with this rapid democratization of the Soviet system. And they blame Gorbachev himself. They think Gorbachev has allowed too much political freedom to the populace and too much political freedom in terms of elections, etc. So in August 1991, these hardliners put Gorbachev under house arrest. Gorbachev is away on holiday at his dacha, his country villa. They send in some KGB, and they basically refuse to allow Gorbachev to leave until they want him to sign away his presidency and give the presidency of the Soviet Union to one of the more hardliners. And the hardliners want to crack down on democracy, they want to reinstitute one-party state, etc. Now Gorbachev refuses to sign and basically says, to hell with you, I'm not having anything to do with this, and you're going to completely pull the system down. But he's under house arrest, hundreds of miles away from Moscow. There's not a great deal he can do. So Yeltsin is the person who ends up leading the opposition to this coup. Yeltsin and various other democratic politicians within Russia. So Yeltsin stands up to the coup. He goes out onto the streets and tells the people of Russia to rebel against the coup. And very importantly, the army decide to back Yeltsin rather than the hardliners, the average troops. Russia has military conscription at this point. About 1.5 million people are in the Russian army. And the Russian army's psychology says that the army is the people's army. It's made up of the people. It's to protect the people. So when the hardliners say to the average troops, potentially you're going to have to fire on the people, they say no. We're part of the people, we represent the people, and we're siding with them. So Yeltsin makes his famous victory speech from on top of a tank. He stands on a tank and makes his speech. So the coup basically dissolves. Once the army won't support them, they run off, one of them commits suicide, others get arrested, it all goes bad. Gorbachev returns back to Moscow, but by this point he's lost any kind of moral authority. People are now rallying around Yeltsin. And it's only a matter of time before Yeltsin starts to take control of all of the assets of the Soviet Union. Within the Russian parliament, he passes decrees, for example, saying that the coal industry, the banks, come under the authority of Russia, not the Soviet Union. And Gorbachev has no mechanisms for really stopping him doing this. So slowly, slice by slice, Yeltsin takes all of the assets of the Soviet Union under Russian control. And Gorbachev is really kind of living in a fantasy land where he's the president of the Soviet Union, but no one's obeying any of his orders. And then we get to December 1991, 3 or 4 months after the coup, and Yeltsin and the presidents of other Soviet republics, most importantly Ukraine and Belarus, come to Gorbachev with a document they want him to sign which dissolves the Soviet Union. And at that point, realizing that the game's up, nobody's really listening to him anymore, Gorbachev signs and the Soviet Union quietly dissolves on Christmas Day 1991. So that's the end of the Soviet Union. Actually quite peaceful, very little bloodshed, quite a surprise, I think, for most of the world. One, that it happened at all, and two, that it happened so peacefully. And Gorbachev, I think, is quite a rare individual in that he wasn't willing to use any kind of violence as a way of shoring up his own power. He'd rather give away power than use the military or any kind of coercive measures as a way of keeping the system together. So quite an important and interesting individual.